"Game," he said, eyes flicking briefly to Lillian. "And you brought your little protege. How charming." Lillian clenched her jaw, but Jonas placed a hand lightly on her back. A silent reminder. "Play the game." "We couldn't resist such an invitation," Jonas replied smoothly. "After all, it's not every day one gets to see London's finest gathered in one place." Pembroke chuckled. "Indeed, and yet, I sense you are not here simply to admire the view." Lillian met his gaze. "No," she said plainly. "I'm here to show you what I can do." A flicker of amusement crossed Pembroke's face. "Oh? And what exactly can you do, Miss Croft?" She lifted her chin. "Give me clay, and I'll show you." A hush fell over the nearby guests. Intrigue sparked in Pembroke's eyes, like a cat toying with a mouse. He clapped his hands. "Very well. Let's see if you're worth the trouble Jonas seems to think you are." Jonas exhaled quietly beside her, barely audible over the murmuring crowd. The trap had been set, and now Lillian had to prove she was not the prey. The grand hall fell silent as a servant brought forth a block of clay, placing it on a finely polished wooden table. The contrast was almost laughable. The raw, unshaped earth against the luxury of Lord Pembroke's world. Lillian rolled up her sleeves, ignoring the whispers around her. She knew what they were thinking. A girl of no status, hands stained with the work of commoners, daring to stand before nobility. Pembroke watched her, swirling his wine. "Whenever you're ready, Miss Croft." She inhaled deeply, pushing aside the weight of their eyes. She had shaped clay her entire life, under the shadow of her father's disappointment, beneath the cruelty of Agatha's hands. This was no different, except it was, because now she was not shaping for survival. She was shaping for herself. Her fingers pressed into the cool clay, coaxing it into form. She worked with steady hands, her mind focused on the rhythm of creation. The nobles whispered, intrigued but unconvinced. Jonas stood near, arms crossed, unreadable, but she could feel it, his belief in her quiet but unwavering. Time blurred. She barely noticed Pembroke moving closer until his voice broke through. "Impressive," he mused. "A potter's hands, but an artist's vision." Lillian straightened, dusting her hands off. Before her sat a sculpture, delicate yet strong. A woman standing tall, hair swept by an unseen wind, hands reaching forward as if grasping for something just out of reach. Pembroke tilted his head. "And what does she reach for, I wonder?" Lillian met his gaze. "Whatever she chooses." The corner of his mouth twitched. "Amusement, or perhaps something else." Jonas, silent until now, stepped forward. "It's a fine piece, but I imagine you didn't bring us here just to admire it." Pembroke chuckled. "No, of course not. Miss Croft has proven herself intriguing. The question is, what shall I do with her?" Lillian stiffened. She didn't like the way he said it, as if she were another object in his collection. He turned to Jonas. "Heart, you know how the world works. Talent means nothing without the right hands shaping its future." Jonas's jaw tightened. "She's not for sale." Pembroke laughed, a slow, knowing sound. "Everything is for sale given the right price." Lillian stepped forward before Jonas could respond. "I came to prove my worth, not to be owned." The room tensed. A challenge. Pembroke studied her, then nodded, as if deciding something. "Then let's make a wager, Miss Croft. If you truly believe in your talent, prove it not just to me, but to London. I will sponsor an exhibition of your work." But his smile sharpened. "If it fails, you walk away. No second chances." Jonas bristled. "That's... I accept." Lillian's voice cut through the tension. Jonas turned to her, disbelief flashing in his eyes. But she didn't waver. Pembroke grinned. "Excellent. Let's see if you're truly as unbreakable as you seem." The game had begun, and the stakes had never been higher. The carriage ride back was thick with silence. Lillian stared out at the blurred city streets, her mind racing. The wager was reckless. She knew that, but she couldn't stand the way Pembroke spoke of her as though she were a thing to be claimed. Jonas sat opposite her, arms folded, watching her with a mix of frustration and something else she couldn't quite name. Finally, he broke the silence. "You had no right to accept without discussing it." Lillian's head snapped toward him. "No right? It's my work, my future." He leaned forward, voice low and tight. "Do you have any idea what you've just walked into? You think London will welcome you with open arms because you can shape clay? This isn't Blackthorn Hollow, Lillian. Nobility doesn't just admire talent. They own it. She clenched her fists. Then I'll make sure they don't own me. Jonas exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. You're playing into his hands. Pembroke doesn't make offers without an angle. Lillian tilted her chin up. And neither do you. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Guilt? Pain? He didn't deny it. The carriage jolted as it came to a stop outside the workshop. Lillian stepped out before Jonas could say another word. She needed air, space to think. She had something to prove, not just to Pembroke, but to herself. Lillian spent the next week in a whirlwind of clay and fire. Each morning, she rose before dawn, her hands shaping, sculpting, perfecting. Jonas watched from the shadows, his presence constant but unreadable. She crafted vases so thin they seemed to glow when held against the light. Statues that captured the silent strength of women often overlooked. Every piece held something of her defiance, her longing, her story. One evening, as she smoothed the delicate curve of a bowl, Jonas finally spoke. You're different when you work. She glanced up, surprised. Different how? He hesitated, then said, You're not just trying to prove yourself anymore. You're creating for the sake of it. Lillian wiped a stray curl from her face, smearing clay across her cheek. Maybe I finally understand what it means to be an artist. Jonas chuckled, shaking his head. No, you've always understood. You just needed to believe it. She felt warmth spread through her chest, but the moment was short-lived. The door swung open, and a breathless courier stumbled inside. Message from Lord Pembroke. Lillian took the letter, unfolding it carefully. The exhibition was set. 1 week, one chance, and failure was not an option. The days leading up to the exhibition passed in a blur of clay, sweat, and sleepless nights. Lillian worked tirelessly, molding each piece with precision, pouring her heart into every curve and detail. The kiln burned day and night, its fire mirroring the determination in her chest. Jonas was always near, offering quiet guidance, though his usual teasing had vanished. He was tense, watching, waiting for something. The night before they were to leave for London, he found her in the workshop, staring at a porcelain figurine. A woman with strong features and sorrowful eyes. Who is she? He asked softly. Lillian traced the figure's face. I don't know yet. Jonas studied her for a long moment before nodding. Then she's waiting for you to give her a story. She sighed, exhaustion settling into her bones. I should sleep. You should, Jonas agreed. But you won't. She smirked. Neither will you. For a brief moment, the weight of their reality faded. But it was always there, lingering just beneath the surface. As Lillian covered the drying pieces, she caught Jonas staring into the fire, his jaw tight. What aren't you telling me? She asked. Jonas didn't look at her. Nothing you don't already suspect. Her stomach twisted. She knew what he meant. Lord Pembroke wasn't just a collector. He was a man who played games. And Jonas knew the rules better than anyone. And yet, she refused to be afraid. Then we'll just have to win, she said firmly. Jonas turned to her, a ghost of a smile on his lips. You always were a stubborn thing. She lifted her chin. It's my best quality. But as she lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, a nagging fear settled over her. Because the truth was, sometimes even the strongest clay cracked under pressure. The streets of London hummed with life. The city was a different world. Crowded, loud, and thrumming with possibility. Jonas led her through winding streets until they reached the gilded hall, where the exhibition was set to take place. It was grand, gold chandeliers, velvet drapes, polished marble floors, and in the center of it all stood Lord Pembroke, smiling like a man who already knew he had one. Ah, Miss Croft, he greeted smoothly. Welcome to the Lion's Den. Lillian refused to let her nerves show. I suppose that would make you the lion? Pembroke chuckled. You do amuse me. His gaze flicked to Jonas. And you, ever the shadow, always lingering. Jonas's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. A curator approached, guiding them to a table where Lillian's pieces were to be displayed. As she arranged them, she felt the weight of the room's judgmental eyes. Nobles murmured. Skeptics scoffed. She ignored them. Time passed in a blur. Guests roamed, pausing at her table, whispering. Some admired, some dismissed, and then silence. Lillian turned and found herself face to face with Lady Evelyn Sinclair, one of London's most influential patrons of the arts. The woman lifted one of Lillian's vases, running her fingers along its delicate design. "This," Lady Sinclair murmured, "is unlike anything I've seen before." The room tensed. Lord Pembroke's smile faltered. Lillian met the woman's gaze. "Then I hope it's something you'll remember." Lady Sinclair set the vase down carefully, then turned to the curator. "I'd like to commission Miss Croft for an exclusive collection." Gasps rippled through the hall. Pembroke's fingers curled around his cane, his pleasant mask slipping. Lillian felt Jonas step closer, his presence grounding her. She had done it, but as Pembroke's dark eyes met hers, she knew this game wasn't over yet. The moment Lady Sinclair announced her commission, the air in the grand hall shifted. Lillian could feel it. The tension, the hushed whispers, the glances that flicked between her and Lord Pembroke. She had won a battle, but she was not foolish enough to believe she had won the war. Pembroke's smile returned, slow and deliberate. "A well-deserved opportunity," he murmured, though the sharpness in his eyes betrayed his words. "Miss Croft, it seems you are full of surprises." Lillian held her ground. "I like to think so." Pembroke chuckled, amused by her defiance. "Then you must celebrate. I insist you join me for dinner tonight at my estate." Jonas stiffened beside her. "That won't be necessary." Pembroke's gaze flicked to him. "Ah, but I believe the lady is capable of deciding for herself." Lillian knew refusing would only make her look afraid, and she refused to let Pembroke think she could be intimidated. "Very well," she said. "I'll come." Jonas exhaled sharply. "Excellent," Pembroke said smoothly. "A carriage will be sent for you at sundown." With a final glance at Jonas, he strode away, vanishing into the sea of aristocrats. Jonas turned to her, eyes dark with frustration. "You shouldn't have agreed." Lillian lifted her chin. "I won't cower from him." Jonas ran a hand through his hair. "This isn't about pride. Pembroke doesn't make invitations, he sets traps." Lillian swallowed but didn't back down. "Then we'll see who gets caught." The Pembroke estate loomed against the darkening sky, an opulent fortress of wealth and power. Lillian had never seen anything like it. Tall columns, sprawling gardens, flickering lanterns casting long shadows over the stone pathway. She stepped out of the carriage, adjusting the simple yet elegant dress Jonas had insisted she wear. She refused to let herself feel small. A butler led her inside, through marble halls adorned with paintings of Pembroke's ancestors, all with the same piercing gaze. She was led to a candlelit dining hall, where Pembroke sat waiting at the head of a long table. "Miss Croft," he greeted. "Do sit." She did, her pulse steady despite the weight of his scrutiny. "I must say," Pembroke continued, pouring himself a glass of wine, "I did not expect Jonas to train someone with such talent. He always did have an eye for lost causes." Lillian didn't react. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. "You seem very interested in Jonas's choices," she said. "Why is that?" Pembroke smirked. "Because he was once one of mine." Lillian's breath caught. Pembroke leaned back. "Did he never tell you that I took him in, shaped him, taught him the ways of the world? And in return he betrayed me." Lillian clenched her hands under the table. "What did he do?" Pembroke's expression darkened. "He stole something from me, something I do not take kindly to losing." Lillian's mind raced. She thought of Jonas's quiet warnings, the way he always seemed watchful, waiting for the past to catch up. "What was it?" she asked. Pembroke smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "His freedom." The room felt colder. "You see," Pembroke continued, swirling his wine, "Jonas was never meant to leave. He belonged to me just as you soon will." Lillian's blood ran cold, but she forced herself to smile. "You overestimate your influence, my lord." Pembroke raised a brow. "Do I?" A door opened, and a servant stepped inside, whispering something in Pembroke's ear. Pembroke sighed. "Ah, it seems Jonas has arrived." Lillian's heart pounded. "Jonas is here?" Pembroke smirked. "Shall we see if he's come to rescue you, or surrender himself?" Jonas stood in the grand foyer, his stance rigid, his hands clenched at his sides. He met Lillian's gaze across the room, but his face gave nothing away. Pembroke stood leisurely, swirling his wine. "Jonas," he drawled. "How predictable." Lillian rose from her seat, but Pembroke held up a hand. "Ah, not just yet." He turned his attention back to Jonas. "Tell me, Did you come here to fight? Or to bargain? Jonas's jaw tightened. Let her go. Pembroke chuckled. And what will you offer me in return? The silence was suffocating. Then Jonas spoke. Me. Lillian's breath caught. No. Jonas ignored her. His gaze remained locked on Pembroke. I'll come back. I'll do whatever you ask. Just let her go. Pembroke exhaled, tapping a finger against his chin as if considering. Then he looked at Lillian, his smile sharp. Fascinating, isn't it? The lengths men will go for the women they care about. Lillian refused to let this happen. She turned to Pembroke. You claim to be a collector of rare things, she said. Then you should know. You'll never find another artist like me. Pembroke raised a brow. She took a step forward. I'll make you a deal, a wager, if you will. Jonas tensed. Lillian. She ignored him. One final piece, a sculpture. If you find it worthy, you will sponsor me, and you will leave Jonas alone. Forever. Pembroke chuckled. And if I do not? Lillian's stomach twisted, but she didn't falter. Then I will walk away. You will never see me or my work again. Jonas turned to her, eyes blazing with silent protest. Pembroke studied her, intrigued. Very well, he said finally. You have 1 week. Lillian exhaled slowly, determination hardening in her chest. 1 week, 1 sculpture, 1 chance to break them free. The carriage ride back was silent. Jonas sat rigid beside Lillian, his jaw tight, his fingers curled into fists. The moment they stepped inside the cottage, he turned to her, eyes blazing. That was reckless. Lillian met his glare. It was necessary. Jonas ran a hand through his hair. Do you even realize what you've done? You made a deal with a man who doesn't lose. She crossed her arms. Then I'll make something he can't deny. He let out a harsh laugh. You're gambling with your future, Lillian. You should have let me handle it. Her temper flared. And how would you have handled it? By sacrificing yourself. Jonas fell silent. Lillian softened. I won't let him take you. I won't let him take anything from us. Jonas exhaled, his frustration giving way to something else, something raw. Then we need to make this piece perfect. She nodded. We will. They had 1 week, 1 chance. Failure was not an option. Lillian worked tirelessly. She barely ate, barely slept. Every moment was spent at the wheel, her hands molding, shaping, refining. Jonas worked beside her, silent but present, offering guidance where needed. He didn't interfere. He knew this had to be hers. She thought of everything she had endured. Agatha's cruelty, her father's absence, the weight of loss, the struggle to carve a place for herself in a world that sought to break her. She would pour it all into the sculpture. Days blurred together. Her fingers bled. The kiln's fire roared. And slowly something beautiful began to take shape. But would it be enough? The morning of the deadline arrived. Lillian stood before her creation, exhaustion pressing heavy on her bones. A figure life-sized, sculpted from the finest porcelain. A woman, poised yet unbroken, her hands raised as if shielding herself from an unseen force. Strength and vulnerability intertwined. It was her. It was every woman who had ever been forced to fight for her place in the world. Jonas exhaled softly. It's breathtaking. She swallowed hard. Let's hope Pembroke thinks so. They packed the sculpture carefully and set off. There was no turning back now. The Pembroke estate was eerily quiet when they arrived. Servants guided them into the grand hall, where Pembroke waited, lounging in his chair, wine in hand. Ah, he murmured, eyes gleaming. Let's see what the prodigy has created. Lillian swallowed and uncovered the sculpture. For the first time, Pembroke was silent. He stood slowly, stepping closer, his fingers grazing the delicate details. Lillian held her breath. Then he exhaled. Magnificent. Relief crashed over her like a wave. Pembroke turned to her. You've won your wager. Jonas tensed. That means... Pembroke smirked. You will have my patronage, Miss Croft, and as agreed, I will no longer pursue Jonas. Lillian met his gaze. And you will not interfere in my life, ever. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. Very well. Lillian nodded. Then we are done here. She turned, Jonas at her side, and together, they walked out. She had done it. She was free. Back at the cottage, Lillian stood in the workshop, running her fingers over the cool clay. For the first time, there was no fear, no doubt. Jonas leaned against the doorframe, watching her. So what now? Lillian smiled, feeling the weight of the past finally lift. Now, she said, I create, and this time it would be for herself. This is the end of an amazing tale. Kindly drop your comments about it.